Hey from Japan, welcome to the Confusion Quick Lessons. My name is Vito, and yeah, I know it's been a while since I've uploaded a quickie, but I'm sorry, I was so busy with my daily job and my last tutorial. So hey, but as long as I keep it coming, I think it's still cool in it. So yeah. So today I want to talk about what I call the scariest tool in Fusion. Now, along with the custom tool in Fusion, the Boolean tool is one of the most difficult to comprehend tools. Now, this is also because there's just not much on documentations out there, nor are there tutorials. So today I want to try to make it very simple, and I try to put myself back to the time when I had to learn this thing. And yeah, and the first thing I did when I opened this tool was I immediately deleted it because I just didn't know what to do with it. I was just overwhelmed. Yeah, so I was thinking how to explain this Boolean tool in an easy way. So I just thought maybe I divide it into several groups and show you what those groups would be doing. Okay, so let's just start. So we have group A. Now I've created a very simple scene, nothing fancy, seriously. Okay, so the first group would be operations that you do with the image or by the image itself, where you don't need a second image. So in this case, we have this image here with beautiful skull rings, which is part of my new tutorial, but it will look a little different. So yeah, anyway, for example, the alpha divide. Okay, don't ask me what alpha divide is. I will make a quickie about alpha divide as well. So if you look at this Boolean tool, what I did here is I set the operation to divide, and I chose alpha foreground in all three channels in order to get a divided alpha. And if I view this, you can see that our anti-aliasing or feather disappears. Okay, now this is one operation I would always do using the Boolean tool. There are also other tools that can do alpha divide, but as I said, this is a different topic. So for now, I just want to show you what you can do with the Boolean tool. Okay, so the next operation you could do with the image by itself would be an invert operation, which is, in our case, it's in the Boolean tool, it's called negative. Okay, so now if we view this, you would get the negative. As simple as that. You don't have to change anything, just set it to negative. But you might be careful, because if you don't want to change the alpha, you should set the alpha to do nothing. Okay, so well, there are many cases where you can use this sort of operations. Of course, for example, a very simple thing is like we have the ambient occlusion pass here, and we do an invert, and then we do a sort of color correction or to get like translucent effect, or I don't know, call it what you want. You know, just okay. Let's move on to the group B. Now in group B, I would put the operations that you would do using two images, like combining of images, like image A and B. For example, the standard operations like multiply or add. Now in our case, we have this pass here, and we have the ambient occlusion pass. And in our Boolean tool, we set the operation to multiply and the alpha to do nothing. If we view this, we get this, right? Okay. And then we have a Fresnel pass, and we use add for the operation, and for the to alpha, we use do nothing. And we view it, and we have combined all our three passes together. Okay. You could also do other things like use your ambient occlusion, color it, and add the Fresnel on top of that. Well, it's basically the same, but you can do a lot of things with that. Okay, so group B is like doing standard operations like multiply and add, basically. Okay, let's move on to the third group, group C. Now here it gets a little interesting, because this is actually a very essential thing. Switching channels Now, I do use it all the time. Okay, now if you take a look into the channels here, you can see that we have Z, normals, and positions in our channels embedded. So sometimes tools in Fusion, they would ask for a pass that is not embedded into the sub channels, but into the RGB channels. Okay, so let's say we have the point position pass. Here's the point position pass. Now we want to shift it into the RGB channels because the tool requires so. You can set the RGB channels to X position foreground to red, Y position foreground to green, and the Z position foreground to blue. Now, it says foreground. It doesn't matter in this case because we have only one input. It doesn't really matter what you do here. It will automatically take the first or the only input. So in this case, the FG doesn't really matter. Okay, so what we are saying here is put the X position data from the X position channels into the RGB channels. Okay, and what we get is this. Now this is the position pass, and usually it always looks like this, weird, but as soon as you activate the normalize button, which is some very cool button in Fusion, you will get a normalized view of your point position pass. Okay, so great. Now, but what if, for example, what if we get a pass from, let's say, V-Ray or another renderer, and we import it into Fusion, and a tool in Fusion requires to have the point position in the point position channels. In this case, we can do the same thing, just the other way around. To visualize, I will just change this point position a little bit so we have a different look. And we go to the next tool here, next Boolean tool. And here, this time, because we want to put things into the sub channels here, we switch to the aux channels, and at the bottom you can see we have the to X position, to Y position, to Z position. Okay, it's the same thing. Choose what you want to put into these channels. Now in our case here, because at this point we put everything into the RGB channel, then we changed it, manipulated it, and here we just say put this, what you see in the RGB channel, back to the channels in here. It's as simple as that. We shifted this, what you see here, we shifted into the point position channels. Now here at this point, if I look into the point position channels, it still looks like the original point position pass. Okay, so here we are in the point position channel and it looks like this. Now if I switch to this one, it will get the information from the RGB channel that comes from here. I know it's a little bit difficult, but you will get your head around it. Okay, so let's switch back to the RGB channel. Now let's say we have the volume fog tool in Fusion and we get the pass from V-Ray or whatever, it doesn't matter. If I would view this now without this Boolean tool here, if I would view the volume fog tool, I would get this weird looking result here, you know, and you would be like, ah, shit, what's going on here? You know, but actually, if you go to the color tab and you check fog only, you have your fog. Okay. Now you don't have to use this checkbox. I prefer and I recommend to use a Boolean tool instead and set all channels to black. Okay. Here you can say do nothing. Now if I activate this, let's go back here. If I activate this Boolean tool, your RGB channels become black. And now you can create your volume fog tool and you don't have to worry that something messes up your volume fog. By the way, the volume fog tool requires a camera, not any camera, but the camera you use to render out your point position pass. It must be exactly the same camera. Okay, so great. Next, let's move to the next example here, which would be another shifting. Let's talk about normal maps. Now with normal maps, there's often a case where you have to switch the red and the green channel. As you know, normal maps indicate directions. Okay, and if we do relighting, the direction is very important. So let's say the direction is wrong. We have here, as again, we have normals embedded in our normal channel, and first we need to extract them in order to change them. So if I view here, what I did is I said put the X normal to the red, the Y normals to the green, the Z normal to the blue. And bang, we have it in the RGB channels now. And now we can manipulate it. Okay, so what I did next is I swapped the green and the red channel. And you can simply do that again using a Boolean tool. Now, we're using Boolean tools all over the place here. You can simply doing that by saying, instead of, by default, this would be set to red and this would be set to green. Okay, this is the default state. And all you have to do is just switch these two here. So instead of red foreground, choose green foreground, and instead of green, you choose red. Now, if you view this and turn it on, bang, we switch the channels. So now we want to use a shader to do some relighting. But here we swept the RGB channels, and the shader requires embedded normals. So what do? We just swap the manipulated image back to the normal channels. We do that as before with the point positions, just this time we use the X, Y, Z normal and shift the red, green, blue to it. And if we check out the normal channel, it's exactly the same. Great, go back to the RGB channels and view the shader. Now here you can see we have our light. We can do some relighting here. And as you can see, the light is coming from the left top. Now let's have a closer look what happens if I turn off the swap RG Boolean here. Control P and you see it goes to the other direction. Okay, great. Now let's move on to the group D. Now this is also a very interesting one. Okay, group C are operations that I personally consider very technical. I mean, this is all technical basically under the hood, but let me show you just an example what I mean here. We can use the Boolean tool to do degraining, sharpening, or even sort of edge detection. And just to mention a few, I mean, there's much more you can do with it. Okay, let's go into an example here. I have a footage here from a project I worked on before. You can see that it has some grain. Now, usually if you do like integration of CG objects, you would first remove the grain, then do your compositing and your integration, and at the end you would apply the grain back. Okay, so let me show you a very simple way to how to remove grain. Of course, again with the Boolean tool. Now, the first thing you would do is blur the image. As you can see, I hope you can see it. Show it again. So blur it. And the next Boolean tool, what the next Boolean tool does is a subtract operation. Okay. Now what it does is basically it takes the blurred image and subtracts it from our grained image. Okay. And by doing so, look here, we get an extraction of our grain. Now, if you hit the normalize button again, you can see here we have our noise extracted. This is our noise, right? Of course, there's a lot of extraction on the face, and we would have to adjust this a little bit. But for this example, it's fine like that. So yeah, let's move on to the next Boolean tool. Now the next Boolean tool basically also doesn't subtract, but this time we subtract our noise or grain extraction again from our grained image. And what we get, if you compare, let's move to the nose. So if you compare this here, you can see that the grain is slightly removed. Of course, you can set it a little stronger. It depends how far you want to go. And yeah, once you've done that, you do your CG implementation or integration, and at the end you would apply a grain back. Okay, great. So the next one I want to show is like a sharpen effect. Now you can use the same technique as we used here to actually achieve a sharpen effect. Now what a sharpen effect does, if I can show you using a filter, let's hook this into the filter, view it, and set it to, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce this, Laplacian, Laplacian, whatever. You can see that basically this gives us the same result as what we've seen here. I mean, look at this. This is actually the same thing. So this tells us that what's going on in this filter here is actually a subtraction. Okay, and using this extraction, for example, here, okay, we have the same extraction here. By adding this on top of our original image, let's view the original image, go a little bit closer, and now we drop in the added version, and you can see that we achieve sort of sharpening. Okay, let me turn this off and on. If you check out the pores here, you can see it's getting a little sharper. Okay, so just just to show you a few things that you can do with the Boolean tool, and actually it's a lot that you can do. I mean, look how many Boolean tools I use now just for those few things here. Once you get used to the Boolean tool, it's a very powerful tool and you're gonna use it all over the place. Okay, looking forward to the next quick lesson. My name is Vito. I'll see you soon. Until then, enjoy what you're doing. See ya.